FTX did not actually have all of their customers' money on hand, something they explicitly said in their terms of service they did, that they were supposed to have. So, of course, that ended up created a spiral that we all know now. FTX, which used to be worth billions, is now essentially bankrupt.
Pete Paschal is the chief of staff at CoinDesk and joins us now to help explain. Pete, welcome to the program.
Hey, Grant. Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Calling SBF, as they call him, Sam Bankman-Fried, a character is probably the understatement of the century, watching some of his interviews. But the money's gone. What happened here, Pete?
Well, before I get into anything, I got to give full credit to my colleagues here at CoinDesk who broke this story. It was one of my colleagues, Ian Allison, who got a hold of the balance sheet of Alameda and showed that Alameda's funds. Now, Alameda was the hedge fund that was kind of the sister company of FTX, now sort of infamously run by SBF's girlfriend. And the books showed there was a very blurry line between the two companies. Essentially, the assets of Alameda were made up largely or very significantly of FTT tokens, which were issued by FTX. So it's being propped up by what was essentially play money, to sort of make the company look a lot stronger than it was. So once that was revealed, the overall stability and liquidity of FTX came into question. It essentially became a run on the bank as customers tried to get their money out, and that caused the reveal that FTX did not actually have all of their customers' money on hand, something they explicitly said in their terms of service they did, that they were supposed to have. So, of course, that ended up created a spiral that we all know now. FTX, which used to be worth billions, is now essentially bankrupt. And they've brought in the gentleman from Enron who oversaw the collapse of Enron, John Ray, to essentially figure out how to distribute whatever's left to the folks who were, got washed out in this.
This reminds me of Enron because if you believe everything that's being said, this was, as you said, play money. I mean, they were essentially IOUs. It wasn't even you were really buying coins. You were buying these promises that they'd pay off on this stuff. And then I just read he took out $300 million recently as investor money was coming in. Somebody gives up $600 million. They take out, Sam Bankman-Fried, $300 million. And then, of course, he's donating to all Democrat causes. You can take a $40 million payment to the Democrats right before the election, and it almost matches up exactly with the $40 million that was spent on Democrat candidates leading up to Election Day. So, I mean, he was all in for the Democrats. Was he thinking this was going to be some kind of a scheme to push left-wing causes and left-wing candidates, or did he just fall into that?
There's so many layers to this thing that are still being unraveled. Like, ultimately, what his motivations were, I think, will probably remain a mystery to some extent. But I do think one thing is clear, regardless of his political views, which certainly seem to lean left, what part of his overall strategy in terms of boosting up FTX was regulatory capture. So essentially, he was putting himself out there as the spokesperson to talk to regulators, to negotiate with Washington on behalf of the crypto industry in a lot of ways. And people were buying into it. He would appear on stage with various lawmakers or former lawmakers, even former President Clinton at one point. So this was clearly something that he had in his mind in terms of like making things more favorable to crypto, but more specifically for FTX and more centralized exchanges as opposed to the entire crypto industry. So in other words, it seems anyway that he was trying to sort of rig the crypto regulatory game for himself, but not so much for the rest of the industry.
I don't know how many people watching are actually invested in crypto right now. Maybe a few of you, maybe a lot of you. I had my own horror stories. I bought Bitcoin at 11,000. It goes down to 3,000. It gets back to 9. I instantly sell it. I'm like, I'm out of this game.
Well, you're still up.
Well, it proceeds to go to 65,000. I sold it at 9, and so now it's 16 if I would have held it. But you have all the regulation. The people
you're ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah, I know it was. So the people that love crypto, though, like the lack of regulation, like the lack of government out of the way, that they can't just come seize your money. And believe me, I believe there's a war on cash going on in this country right now. So how do you balance the regulatory environment with what happened here and the need for privacy and the want of privacy of many crypto users?
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, you really zeroing in on like one of the biggest questions in crypto now and sort of how it interacts with regulation. Look, this whole debacle with FTX, I think it's inevitable. We're going to see some kind of regulatory response at some point. And one of my other colleagues, Nicholas Day, is all over that, and will be reporting on that at CoinDesk. But one of the things that I think that anyone can take away from this with regard to privacy and custody of crypto is that if it is something that you say to everybody in terms of the advice you give with when you buy crypto, not your keys, not your coins. And what that essentially means is if you are leaving your funds, you buy Bitcoin, Ether, or any other token, and you leave those on an exchange, basically essentially using their wallet to keep your funds and exchange your crypto with either other crypto or fiat, you don't really have that money. And if anything happens to that exchange, you could get wiped out, because crypto, unlike other kinds of assets, in particular cash at a bank, is not FDIC insured. So if anything happens, like as we've seen here in FTX, the company's basically worthless now, and whatever assets they have are going to be distributed to investors and creditors and to whatever order John Ray thinks they should be. You won't be able to get that back, and certainly there'll be there'll be class action lawsuits, and there's going to be they filed for bankruptcy, so there's all this stuff. I mean, you really need to move those funds off the exchange into some kind of wallet of your own. And even though that's technically hard, I mean, it is 100% the top recommendation I have for people after this fiasco.
That is the best advice out there, because you got to control it, but boy, it can get complicated at times. I know CoinDesk is great at helping people with all of that stuff too. So Pete Paschal, it's great having you on the program. I appreciate you talking about all this complicated subject, but interesting to say the least.